Hello, everyone. Welcome to this little chat we're going to have about your book. I'm very excited to introduce you to Bella Mackie.
Thank
I
you all for coming.
am fanboying because I absolutely adored your first book, How to Kill Your Family. I will say, I think I gave my mum the fright of her life when I came home with it on Boxing Day. It felt like very loaded after,
Very pointed after
an
Christmas.
intense period of family time. But today we're here to talk about this next book, What a Way to Go. So how do you feel? Second fictional novel, do you feel more or less pressure this time? Do you feel like you have something to prove or something to follow up?
I feel way more pressure. I didn't feel any pressure for How to Kill Your Family because no one had ever really heard of me. I'd written some nonfiction, but and it was COVID, so no one was going out, and so I didn't do any events. And I just thought, and my publishers, I think, thought like, not, it wasn't a pity buy, but it was like a kind of, might do quite, nicely. And I was thinking maybe I'll sell like 25,000 copies. That would be amazing. And so, I was blithely ignorant about the whole thing. And then it did really well. And I sort of detached myself from that. 'Cause that's not really anything to do with me. I'm sort of like, I didn't go around the world pushing it on people. It just sort of did its own thing. And that was amazing to watch. But sort of, I'm just sitting in my house in my leggings writing. I'm not, going out there with it. And so when it came to writing this one, I suddenly was like, oh Christ, what do people want it to be? And I was completely kind of paralyzed by it. And so I've been a huge baby about it for the last 2 years, just being like, oh God, I don't know what to do. And people, I alternating between giving me a stern talking to and being like, it's fine, you're going to be great. Like as if I'm sort of a kid in nursery. So I've handled the whole thing very badly.
Yeah. Great. Now it feels like therapy. But thanks for coming. I wanted to ask you to quickly give a little summary of the book for the uninitiated. I know it just came out. So, I mean, as a show of hands, how many people in the room have read How to Kill Your Family? Okay, great.
Wow.
Has anyone started on this one yet? Okay, yes.
Oh, wow.
Look at that. Okay. But for the uninitiated, could you give us a little insight into what we can expect from this book?
Yeah. So I always explain it really badly. My husband always says, you have to describe the plot in 3 sentences. And after about 15 sentences, he's like, no, that's not it. So I've been working on trying to get it down unsuccessfully. I think basically it's kind of a whodunit. It's a funny whodunit about horrible rich people. And a very rich, the man, the father, the patriarch dies early on in the book, which isn't really a spoiler. And then it's sort of all about the kind of the reputation that he leaves behind and the battle over his inheritance and also who killed him, what happened. And so there is a third element, which is this true crime armchair enthusiast who is desperate to figure out what happened and sort of make a name for herself. So there's different elements running through it, but mainly it's a kind of, it's a funny whodunit. I hope it's funny, but it's a funny whodunit.
I thought it was funny. Like intentionally funny.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be much worse if it was unintentional.
If we were laughing at you. No, it's definitely not that. So I wanted to ask you, how do you get into your characters' minds? Because in this book, we have 3 different kind of main perspectives. So do you take BuzzFeed quizzes as if you were your characters? Do you curate Spotify playlists for those characters? How do you get into their psyche?
It's a really good question. I think it's like a mix of all of those kind of things, like pop cultural references. I read a lot about rich people, always have, just they fascinate me, like the super, super rich.
Bizarre.
I know that and true crime were my big things when I was a kid. I was like reading Hello magazine and then like murder magazines. And so I read a lot about terrible rich people, and so it's things like that. Pop culture quite often sparks my ideas off. So obviously I'd been watching a lot of Succession. I think I can't deny that had an influence on it. And then people like I was thinking a lot about, this is a really old reference and everyone here is really young, so I will explain it to you. There was a man called Robert Maxwell who, there's a few nods. Not as young as you look. And I was thinking a lot about Robert Maxwell because what I was thinking was, so Robert Maxwell, was a sort of tycoon who owned newspapers, and he basically robbed his employees' pensions and then fell off the back of his yacht and died. And no one knew whether it was suicide or a murder or whatever. And the reason I was thinking about it is because his daughter Ghislaine was Jeffrey Epstein's best friend, just to take it to a really bleak place. And the yacht was called the Lady Ghislaine, and she was his favorite daughter. And I thought, how weird must it have been growing up knowing that one kid is the favorite and you're all going to have this inheritance. And if you know that you're going to, earn £1 billion when your dad dies, does that change the relationship you have with your siblings? Does that mean, how do you can't, that's not a normal family to kind of be looking at your sister thinking like she's going to fucking try and one up me and, get my inheritance. So I was thinking about all of that. So yeah, so there are lots of things that come into my mind, but it's never one thing. It's always like 50 things,
Yeah. And that question of inheritance and who gets it is kind of a central theme in this book. And as a result, we get to experience all of these different characters, and a lot of them are very flawed and say terrible things to each other and are callous and mean and rude. I wondered, do you think characters need to be likable to be, interesting for us to read in a novel?
What do you think? Because
I thoroughly enjoyed. I thoroughly enjoyed getting to see how awful these people were to one another.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because I don't know whether you agree with this, but I think as a reader, something needs to like hold your interest. I think sometimes there are books where you read them and you go, I don't know why I care about any of these people. I don't care about this story. I'm not interested in what happens to these people. And I think I was worried about with this because I thought there's a risk that people are going to go, these are just horrible rich people and I just don't care what happens to them. So I think the important thing there is to kind of find the funny. I think if you can find the funny, and also I think the other important part of that is telling it in the first person, because I think that way you get all their worst, weirdest thoughts. Whereas if I was telling this book in the third person, it might come across kind of too straight in a way, I think. So, but you're right. I think likability, I don't know. Do you have to like, maybe not. Maybe anti-heroes are really popular now, aren't they? So maybe it's not as kind of, also everyone's trying to be likable in life. Maybe it's nice to, not be likable.
Have a day off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Was that kind of nice to get to be just a little bit
amazing.
evil?
Yeah. And I think I got hooked on it with Grace from How to Kill Your Family because it was so fun writing a character that's kind of awful and unapologetic about it. I spend my whole life thinking, oh my God, did I upset that person? Oh God, does that person hate me? And she didn't. She thought, she didn't care. She didn't think about that person at all. So yeah, I think I got hooked on it, and now I can't stop writing people like that.
Is it hard to snap out of it when you finish writing for the day? You're like a bit rude for the first 5 minutes after you wrap up.
God, maybe. But I mean, to be fair, that's probably it's a good thing that I, work alone in my house, and that by the time my husband's home, maybe I'm out of my system.
Time
Yeah.
to cool off. Well, one thing I love about a book, one thing that gets me so hooked on a book straight away is a cracking opening line. And I really think you nailed it with this one. I'm going to read it out.
Okay, go, yeah, please.
Looking back on it now, I wouldn't change much about the night I died. And I thought that was just brilliant. And when we meet Anthony, he's already dead. So I wanted to know, was this the plan from the beginning? How do you outline a book like this where we have to kind of have a bit of a whodunit moment?
Well, I think I was saying this yesterday, that actually structure is so important when you're writing a novel. You really do have to have a structure. And I did not know this when I wrote this book. I already weirdly had the structure of How to Kill Your Family just because I, envisaged murder. And that's the structure, is just murder. And the plot. But with this book, I didn't have a structure. And so what I was doing was I was trying out their voices. I start with him and then I thought, oh no, but he dies, but I'm enjoying writing as him. So what am I going to do? And so I spent a long time thinking, oh, maybe he doesn't die, or maybe I do flashbacks. And then I thought, oh, he could be dead. And then I thought, but then it's a fantasy book. And then I thought, well, maybe it doesn't matter. And then I thought, oh, fuck it, it's my book and I'll see what happens.
You do what you want.
I'll do what I fucking want, exactly. And my editor didn't say no. So I just went with it. And actually, I think that was my funnest part of writing it, was the afterlife. Writing his character in death was, for me, in a way, it was the kind of thing where once I'd finished doing it, I thought I wish I'd done the whole book from death.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that element too. And I think sometimes those kind of magical realism elements actually bring out the humanity more, because we really get to be inside his head, because we're in this situation that none of us have experienced where he is in the afterlife. So I really enjoyed that too. I loved how you explored the relationship between Anthony and his wife, Olivia, who, isn't always the biggest fan of his. And there's this real rage kind of emanating from her. And this is something we also saw in How to Kill Your Family. So what is it that keeps drawing you to this theme of female rage?
I mean, without wanting to sound like a sort of white feminist being like, oh, just I'm angry about the world. But like, I guess I am angry about everything. But I mean, they're angry, Grace is angry because she has actually had like, people have been hard, she's been hard done by. Olivia's angry because she's bored and she's kind of been boxed into this, life where she's a kind of trophy wife, but she's aging out of being a trophy wife, really. She's in her 50s and how long can you do that for?
There are some new trophies in the cabinet.
There are some, the shinier trophies.
Some shinier ones.
Yeah. But none with the canniness that she has. And again, this is showing my age because all my references are like from the 1800s. But I really thought a lot about Lord Lucan's wife. Again, I will have to explain who Lord Lucan was. Again, there are a few nods. Lord Lucan was a lord who he was basically a ne'er-do-well. He did nothing of any note or value. He was just a layabout. Like he'd be called like an it boy maybe. Anyway, he killed his nanny, but he meant to kill his wife. So he broke into the house and bludgeoned his nanny to death, trying to kill her because he wanted a divorce and he wanted custody of kids and he wanted the house, more importantly, because he was deep in gambling debts and he needed the house to sell off to pay off the gambling debts. Side note, his house in 1960 was in Mayfair. It was a 6th-floor house in Mayfair. It cost £8,000. And nowadays, the conversion rate to that would mean that house was, I think, if I'm correct, it was £600,000 for a 6th-floor house in Mayfair.
It hurts my heart a little bit.
I know. Yeah. And boomers tell you that it's, if you just work hard. So I thought a lot about him and his wife. And his wife was this very glamorous blonde lady with a beehive, very kind of the moment. And she was left after this, the nanny had been killed. It was supposed to be her. And she's left. Her husband fled the country, aided by his rich friends. And she was left to live this very bitter, angry, sad life. So I thought a lot about her. And she's dead now, so she can't sue me for doing that. Yeah.
What a result.
Yeah, what a way to go.
What a way to go. Always be on brand.
How obnoxious if I started using a tagline, my own tagline.
Oh, I like it. You should get that on a t-shirt as well. Now, both How to Kill Your Family and What a Way to Go explore the theme of wealth inequality and wealth disparity. In How to Kill Your Family, it's kind of from the outside looking in. But in this book, we get to see the inside of what it is like to be in one of those families where there is this excess wealth and it's glamorous. They have these huge parties. At one point, they note that the marquee of the party is bigger than some people's houses, which again, hurt my heart a little bit. So I wondered, why is it so important for you to explore that theme of wealth inequality?
I think I've always been really fascinated by the British class system and about the fact that it seems to be so unique.
For sure.
Obviously other countries have their own versions, but the British class system is such an odd structured thing that we've all sort of been born into no one's taught us about it. It's just that it's sort of this unspoken rigid thing and no one can move. You can't move, you are where you are and you can become successful, you can earn lots of money or you can lose lots of money, but you can't move out of the strata. And I find that really interesting. And I also find the new 0.001% of sort of super wealth fascinating. If you look around where we are now, there are houses that are kind of, again, like 8th-floor houses that are empty because that's someone's 4th or 5th home. And you never see those people because those people go from helicopter to jet to private car to private members club to their next holiday home. They're sort of global citizens. If you ask those people where they live, they say, oh, well, I live between New York and London and Gstaad and somewhere else. And I think it's the inaccessibility of it, which I find so interesting because I'm imagining what these people are like. I don't actually know what they're like. And actually, since I wrote it, a couple of people have told me, they've said, you got it wrong. And I was going, what do you mean I got it wrong? And they went, you just really underplayed it. You really underplayed.
You didn't go far enough.
So someone told me a story of she works as an interior design writer. She writes about interior design. And she had covered a couple who told her this story as if it was funny and relatable, that they had gone to stay at Claridge's. And in the morning when they were having breakfast, the wife turned to the husband and said, oh, darling, we forgot about the house on Abelmar Street. They had forgotten they had a house.
Just down the road?
In Mayfair, around the corner, because they had 9 houses. And then last week, someone told me a story about a couple who live in London who they both have helicopters to go to their countryside house in, I think it's Somerset. And apparently on Fridays in Battersea, where there's a helipad, which just the business is just rich people going to their country houses in helicopters
for the weekend.
all night. Yeah. Wow. So I underplayed it because I didn't give them a helicopter. I didn't give them 9 houses. You know, they only have 1 housekeeper. So even in my imagination,
poor things.
Yeah. But even in my imagination, I can't get it right because none of us see it.
Yeah, we can't even fathom it.
Yeah. I thought I was being over the top with this, but it turns out, you know, not at all.
Yeah. And I think one character I particularly enjoyed was the other perspective that we get, which is the sleuth, who is a lady who's very intrigued with true crime. And she kind of takes it upon herself to start investigating this scenario, the death of Anthony. And, you know, at times she kind of feels like a mirror reflection of the reader or the listener, if you like your audiobooks on Spotify. Thank you very much. And her curiosity with the...
So professional.
Smooth.
Lovely.
Always smooth.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. They'll have me back. I'm still writing my book. I got to make sure I'm still employed.
Yeah, no, good for you.
Anyways. And her curiosity with the family is one that we kind of all seem to have with the wealthy. You know, we're so intrigued. But I wondered... what your relationship is with true crime. You said that you found it very interesting. Did you kind of see yourself maybe in that character?
So the relationship I have with true crime is that I'm interested in people who are interested in true crime, if you see what I mean. So that's kind of, I feel like I imbibed a lot of it as a kid with like weird magazines and being obsessed with like Fred West and stuff. It's just looking back, like very odd. Again, an old reference for you there. And I think I sort of felt like, you know, when you gorge too much on something, I eventually got to a point where I thought, oh, I'm using, you know, dead people as entertainment. And I started feeling like there was just a tipping point for me. So I've moved away from it and I don't really imbibe too much true crime, although obviously sometimes something will come up and I'll, you know, but I am fascinated by the phenomenon of kind of, I think humans have always been fascinated by death and murder and violence. And, you know, I just think we're a violent species. And I think trying to come up with reasons as to why we like true crime, sometimes they're really convoluted and sort of seeking to deny the fact that I think sometimes people just like to see how people died in gruesome ways. You know, I mean, people used to go to public stonings and, you know, hangings. I kind of don't see that there's any difference really. I think we just like to pretend that it's because it makes us feel safe or we're, you know, hoping for retribution. I think sometimes it's like, it's just violent, but I'm fascinated by the fact that it's kind of gone from, you know, podcasts, documentaries, all of that kind of stuff. And it's just gone straight down into social media. So you can now watch true crime, you know, documentaries on TikTok, on Instagram, on Reddit. And that's created these huge communities of people who they investigate true crime themselves. You know, they genuinely, they will go to crime sites. They will call up the family members of people who've died. They will accuse people of things. You know, there've been lots of recent cases to illustrate that, like Jay Slater, who died in Tenerife. Probably most of you saw TikTok things about him, you know, but with the most outlandish kind of conspiracy theories about how he died, accusing his family of doing it to get a GoFundMe, you know, all of this kind of stuff. So I find that really interesting that I think the internet has blurred that boundary of what we think is appropriate from becoming like from just being a viewer to thinking that we're all Sherlock Holmes. Yeah. And I find that really disturbing and worrying, but it's also for me fascinating. Like what does a person, where does that come from for a person to think that they can step into that and do those things? Very strange. And
we see that in the novel, you know, people turn up to the murder scene and our character is almost in a way annoyed that someone got there before she did.
Yeah.
They kind of have like beef on the forums and on the threads. And you're right, they kind of forget that they are dehumanizing a very tragic scenario that has just unfolded. At one point you say that one of the characters says the more gruesome the better, you know, with their fascination with these deaths of real people. Do you think that there is a way we can have a healthy relationship with true crime, or is it sort of doomed?
I think that there are ways. I think like the example I always give is there's a brilliant book, you might have read it, called The Five by Hallie Rubenhold, which is about the victims of Jack the Ripper. And it's a really big book, and she's just meticulously researched the canonical five women that he is said to have killed. And she takes you through their entire lives from birth to the day of their deaths, but she doesn't cover the death. She just, the story ends, like 10 minutes before. And she never mentions Jack the Ripper's name. And the book is, the common theory is, they were all sex workers and, drunk and homeless and all this stuff. And actually, some of them were sex workers, but mainly they had, whole lives that no one ever talks about. They were mothers and, they were talented in their own rights. And just in Victorian society, there was no social safety net. So if you fell kind of that much, you fell all the way to the, to the bottom. And that's how they ended up in that situation. And reading about their lives was so interesting to me. And I thought, okay, you can't get away from the crime here. That's why I'm reading about you. But actually, to learn about the victims, I think, is one way of doing it, which is a healthier way of doing it. Ripperologists, which is such a lame term for like...
That's a red flag in a Tinder bio, isn't it?
Imagine.
Oh.
That person would also have it would be like a cut off photo of their head and they're holding a fish.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. For sure.
They hate her, Hallie Rubenhold. She talks about this in interviews because they think that, but I think they're annoyed that it's a woman, but also they're like, it's just not historically accurate. We're looking for the Ripper, and they really hate the book. They flood it with 1-star reviews, but it's such a good book. So I think there is a way.
That makes me want to read it more.
It's so good, honestly. Yeah. It's fascinating. I think there is a way of doing it like that, but I also think if you can't deny the fact that people are interested in the violence of it and the kind of gruesomeness of it, and it's difficult to say like there's an ethical way to consume it, but that doesn't mean that like we all do at some point. It's just maybe being mindful that like you do have to remember that like it is a victim, and in the world of social media where you can reach out and contact people, or you just have to be mindful that like that might mean that the victim's family see things.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people forget online. I've seen it. People comment on stuff, that I'm tagged in, and, someone will say, oh, like, I hate your book, and I hate this book. And I'm like, I can see this. So if you take that, another step, you think, okay, well, actually,
this is the internet I also use.
Yeah, this is the internet that everyone can see. So just maybe think about the fact that, your weird conspiracy theory about this person's murder is maybe, maybe just have it in your own head.
Yeah. Maybe keep it in there. I've enjoyed that that thread we're seeing in novels, in Penance by Eliza Clark, or The Death of a Bookseller by Alice Slater, I think. And it's interesting to see that kind of discourse around true crime as a genre. What do you hope listeners will take away from What a Way to Go?
I mean, hopefully, like I was saying this to my husband, actually. I was like, he said that, and I was like, well, look, I mean, it's not like Dickens. I'm not like giving you like these big lessons. This is supposed to be a funny book that you really enjoy reading. My favorite books are the ones where, you sit down and you think, I'll just read for an hour, and then you want to get to the end, and so you read the whole. That's what I wanted to write, is something that really grips people and gives people a day off from like their brains. That's all I wanted to do. I'm not, I'm not pretending that I'm saying something huge about society. I just wanted to make people laugh.
I think you definitely succeeded in that. This was one of those books. My friends always get so mad at me for dog-earing the pages of my books.
Why?
They say I'm ruining it, but you know what's the best thing? When I read a book cover to cover in one sitting, no dog-earing required. Thank you very much.
Oh, you should use that as like a marker for a book.
Exactly.
Like 50 dogs is terrible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This book, no dogs. I did notice that you had made a Spotify playlist.
I did.
For this book. I noticed that some of the songs were Murder, She Wrote, Professional Widow, and also we have The Last Great American Dynasty by Taylor Swift, which I also thought was perfect for this book. So how did you come up with that? Was it something you listened to while you were making the book, right, where you were writing the book, or was it kind of a post-production thing?
I just think all those songs are songs that I listen to anyway.
Yeah.
So they're on my mind while I'm writing. If I'm listening to like playlists when I'm writing, I'm quite often listening to kind of either incredibly upbeat music or quite angry music. And so those are the songs that I was sort of most listening to on rotation while I was writing. And I think, they all do kind of, I think they fit a theme. Mm-hmm. There's nothing cheerful or sort of optimistic on that list.
Yeah.
But it was really fun for me to look at the most played stuff that I'd been sort of listening to while I was writing, and realizing how much it was like on brand. Mm-hmm. Like clearly there was like a suggestion element of listening to this stuff and then getting into the character.
Yeah. And if you have this entire playlist, but if you could pick just one song that you think kind of sums up this book.
God. That's really difficult. I can't remember what was on it now. It's got loads of songs on that list. Probably, I mean, it's probably, what is it? Actually, it's probably the theme from Chicago, because I was listening to that a lot, and now it's like a TikTok meme, so I keep hearing it all the time.
It's haunting you.
Yeah, it's haunting me.
If you can't beat them, join them.
Well, exactly. I mean, yesterday I thought, how hard can it be to do that dance? Has anyone seen the Chicago dance? They do this kind of high kick, leg thing to what's the song called?
He Had It Coming.
He Had It Coming.
Gotcha.
And all these ballet dancers are doing it online, and it genuinely yesterday I thought, I think I could do that. And then I thought, I'm 41 years old, please don't go on TikTok, don't make your first viral video you trying to do this dance. So yeah, I'm staying away.
I'm really glad that no one in the room leapt up and said, let's do it now. I'm glad that we have this level of understanding that we're not actually going to do it.
We're not doing it.
And I also love listening to the audiobook of this on Spotify. Are you an audiobook listener?
I am.
You are.
Huge.
Do you have any recommendations for us?
Okay, yeah. I will tell you that I think Agatha Christie novels, if you're a fan, are fantastic on audio. Mm-hmm. They're fantastic to listen to, because the narration, I mean, there's loads of different narrators, but I think it's called Hugh. Thank you.
Wow.
Do you also listen to Agatha Christie books when you go to sleep? Because is that just a toxic trait that I have? My husband's was like, night, babe. And I'm like, night, thank you. Just putting in one of my murders. So I listen to those before I go to bed every night.
You must have crazy dreams.
I do have crazy dreams, but that's because I take anti-anxiety medication, and that gives me insane dreams.
Okay.
I'm on a new one at the moment, and the dreams I'm having are bonkers. But when you're enjoying them, you're like, this is so weird. Where's it going? It's so cool.
Book 3 is going to be nuts.
Yeah, nuts. So I would really recommend Agatha Christie's, because I think they're fantastic. And then what was my most recent download? I'm trying to think. I listened to Demon Copperhead, and it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
When you get a narrator that just fits exactly, because I'd read it and then I thought, I'm going to listen to it, and I just thought it was amazing.
What was it like hearing back actors, sharing your work? When you hear an audiobook, is it strange to hear those characters come to life?
So I only heard it this morning.
Oh.
Yeah, actually on Spotify, I was like, I'm going to go listen to this, and it sounds insane. I was like, oh my God, these people are and they were, they had different intonation from the way that I thought about it. But it was amazing. I loved it. And actually with How to Kill Your Family, there's a bit at the end. I mean, I'm not going to spoil it. The Statute of Limitations, it came out ages ago. If you haven't read it, you don't want to. But at the end, there's a secret surprise brother at the end. Yeah. So the whole book is read by this actress called Charlie Clive, who's amazing. And I was listening to it, and then at the end, I hadn't thought about the fact that there had to be a male character, and this man turns up, and I screamed as if I hadn't written it.
Yeah.
So listening to something, I think, especially if you've read it and then you listen, is a really nice double thing to do if you love a book.
Oh, you must be like, this is great.
Yeah, I was like,
the twists keep coming.
A wonderful book. I was like, I don't know why everyone says they hated the ending. It's great. That is my most. That's the thing that's going to be on my tombstone. Is she should have written a better ending for How to Kill Your Family.
That's pretty good. She should have had a better ending on your tombstone. It's pretty.
Nice.
It's pretty poetic, isn't it?
What a way to go.
Oh, she's good. She is good. I have to ask you, is it true that Anya Taylor-Joy will be bringing to life Grace from How to Kill Your Family?
Yes, it is.
That is really cool.
It's very cool. I have met her, and she looks like the most beautiful alien you've ever seen in your life.
Wow.
She doesn't look like a real person. She looks like an advert, in a magazine. She's ridiculous and so nice, but human, because she has a phone case, which is like the one your dad has, which is like a leather flip.
Oh, it flips out.
With a wallet. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And it's tatty and old. And I looked at him and was like, and I went, I'm sorry, is that your phone case? And she went, yeah. I went, sorry, why have you got granddad's phone case on you? And the producers were looking at me like, shut the fuck up.
We need this.
And I couldn't stop. I was like, no, but I mean, seriously, what is that? And she took it so well and texted me a few weeks later being like, lol, got a new phone. I was like, yeah, you needed to. She's wearing Chanel couture, and then she's got this ropey old thing that she bought at a farmer's market.
Maybe that's the secret.
That's her Achilles heel. Everything else about her is perfect.
Well, one final question for you, because I'm sure even though this one has just come out, we're all desperate to know, are you working on anything else? What can we expect in the future?
I am contractually obliged to work on something else.
Fantastic.
And it's one of those things where everyone's like, so how are you getting on with any writing? Like my editor and my agent, like anything happening? And I'm like, no, but I have plotted it out. And it's this book is going to be about, so I've done new rich, old rich, internal, external. And now I'm going to do the hypocritical middle class, of which I am part. So it'll just be like writing a memoir. That's what my husband said. He went, oh, so it's a memoir. And I was like, fuck you. So yeah, that'll be the third one.
Well, we thoroughly are looking forward to that. But in the meantime, you have this incredible book to read and consume and listen to and enjoy. This is What a Way to Go. Thank you so much, Bella Mackie.
Thank you so much. That was so lovely. Thank you.